it's time for the rapid fire talks. That, as you can imagine, we aim to get key knowledge in a very rapid way from different organizations and different people. I'm going to call Nora Rouillier, sorry for my pronunciation, from the National Museum of Natural History, who is going to present about the Agricultural Observatory of Biodiversity. Nora, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So hello everyone, and thank you very much for the invitation.
Can't hear you.
Do you see my screen? Yeah.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I'm Nora Rouillier from the National Museum of Natural History in France, and I'm the national coordinator of the project that I'm going to talk to you about today. It's Observatoire Agricole de la Biodiversité, the Farmland Biodiversity Observatory, so the FBO. So FBO is part of the French network Viginature. It's citizen science programs led by the French National Museum of Natural History that are interested in common species to study how biodiversity reacts to global changes like urbanization, climate change, etc. So there is observatory for schools, for the general public, for naturalists and professional, and FBO is addressed to the agricultural professional. We are recording butterflies, terrestrial invertebrates, solitary bees, earthworms, and bats. The three objectives of the program Viginature are scientific, like publication of paper in scientific reviews, pedagogical, learning by observation and of nature and formation, and political, like the production of indicators for deciders. So this project started in 2009 to respond to a proven lack of indicators for monitoring the state of biodiversity in agriculture in relation to practices that development actors, decision makers, and research partners were waiting for to qualify the relationships between agricultural practices and biodiversity. A test phase in 2010 allowed scientists to co-construct the observation protocol with volunteer farmers. And we have to wait 10 years to have the launch of a PhD made by Olivier Billot on the data produced by this project. So in terms of governance, it's a project initiated by Ministry of Agriculture, and scientific coordination is led by the French National Museum of Natural History and with the help of the Permanent Assembly of Chamber of Agriculture. The essential part of the operation is based on the network organization. The national animation produce content and training courses that are followed by local instructors from various structures, and they are the ones who directly support the farmers on the field and during all year in the participation. It is essential to have relays because the farmer needs a personalized and constant accompaniment during the field season, and we cannot do it from the national coordination. All structures wishing to get involved can join us, like naturalists in association, chambers of agriculture, Hunters Federation, and so on. About the participation, so the participation covers all the territory of metropolitan France, and more than 1,500 farms have participated since 2011 for different types of crops. In order to support animation, tools are developed, like participation tool, as you can see here, field guide. There is an input interface for agricultural practices on the FBO website, and there is also a mobile application. There are also awareness tools in order to respond to the pedagogical goals, like a life circle, as you can see with snail here. And there is identification keys, species guides, and webinars that you can find on the website also. Considering the results, so the first step is to provide feedback to participants. So we do produce reference so the participant can locate their plot on the pool of FBO's data, and we do an annual report. And the second step is to have significant result for publication in scientific review, but this one needs a lot of data to be significant. The FBO has also been studied from a social point of view, with results on the evolution of the perception of nature by farmers. Thus, there is change in farmers' perception of nature, as you can see in this little extract of an article that is actually in French, but the abstract is also in English if you want to check. The obstacles we did encounter is like there is a great turnover between participants. Only a few last longer than 2 years. The reason are limitation of protocols, the lack of local animation because some funding ended or there is no time anymore in the structure. The data entry is also very long. Participants do not enter all the practices because, like in agricultural practices, there is a lot to say. So even with the new website interface to entry the données, it's really long. And without satisfactory feedback to the participation, there is some demotivation. We try to do a lot of feedback, but it's sometimes not enough. Only there is there is only one full-time person on the project at the national scale, so this limits the possible development for lack of time. Some participants sometimes are disappointed because they wanted to have diagnostic tools and at the plot scale, so they want to participate and have feedback so they can adapt their practices, and the FBO cannot do that. And we have a lot of data needed to have significant result, as I already said. And as I told you, we had to wait 10 years to produce the first scientific result, and this result could be refined with more data and more accurate data, but it takes a long time to collect. And about the perspective and what we try to do to perpetuate the participation. So we want to put automatic feedback to participants on the website. We try to propose regular webinar to maintain the link between the research and the field in order to have some exchanges between these two groups. We try to take more time for organizing exchanges between participants to boost the network also. And we are working to propose new protocols, like we are actually thinking about a coprophage protocol and new tools like video training and so on. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Nora. It has been fascinating again, a very interesting talk. I suggest to do the 3 rapid fire talks, and then if you have questions, of course, explain the question for who is that question, and then we can make this more rapid, because this is a session of rapid fire talks. So thank you very much, Nora. We're going to continue with Hannes Lederhen, sorry for my pronunciation, from Natuurpunt. Very nice profile photo of the very young links, by the way. So the floor is yours, Hans.
Check. There we go. Now you should all be able to hear me as well.
Yeah, we can.
All right, that is great. I am Hannes. I work for Natuurpunt, which is the largest nature NGO organization of Belgium. And today I will talk with you a little bit more about monitoring biodiversity with a specific focus on private land. I know in the announcement it was said I was going to talk about Waarnemingen.be, which is our largest nature database. But I also wanted to show some examples of good practice to do really like a structured monitoring scheme with volunteers on private land. To give a short situation, we are not in Catalonia anymore, we're in Flanders, so the northern part of Belgium. It has almost 490 inhabitants per square kilometer, so you can see it is quite densely populated, and that brings some big challenges for nature conservation, of course. And it should also be clear that this means that a lot of the remnants of nature and a lot of the really important species on a European scale can be located not only in natural areas, but also on military domains and on private-owned land. In 2016, we started up a national monitoring scheme. So the aim was to research for over 65 species and all of the birds from the bird directive, what their current status was, and to make a long-term monitoring scheme to calculate all of their trends, how are they doing, and to report that to Europe. This is for 65 species in 11 different species groups, plus then all of the birds. As I mentioned, this is our standardized monitoring scheme. This means that we will do repeated measures with a very standardized protocol on the same locations. We have two, let's say, big categories in this. On the one hand, we have those species that are so rare that we will monitor all of their populations annually. For example, the grizzled skipper here, we will visit the site 3 times in the month of May, every year on all of their remaining 4 populations in Flanders, doing the Pollard's Wall protocol, which is pretty standard for monitoring butterflies. On the other hand, we have species where the populations that needed to be monitored were selected by a sample. This means we did a generalized random stratified sample to see, okay, which populations do we need to go and monitor in order to be able to get a really good trend for this population or for the species that is representative for the population of the whole of Flanders. So here in this case, 60 populations were selected and 20 of them were monitored annually, so that every cycle of 3 years, all populations are monitored. This project was not run entirely by Natuurpunt, so it's a big cooperation. The government actually wrote all of the protocols, and the monitoring is being carried out by Natuurpunt. The thing is, the monitoring needs to take place in over 2,000 locations in all of Flanders. And we all know that funding is limited for nature conservation in general. And this means that it really is the type of project you cannot do without volunteers. So citizen science is key these days in any way in nature conservation, and so as well for these standardized monitoring schemes. So what would we do? We handpicked and trained over 900 volunteers. And every year, over 350 of them do these very standardized counts. And as Nora mentioned, to keep them motivated, it is really key that there is enough feedback to these volunteers, but also to approach it in a good way. So what we find that is really golden is to really ask them personally, do you want to do 3 counts for me this year in the month of May? Go and do the grizzled skipper. You are a very specialized man in regards to butterflies. I have trust in you, and we will teach you how to do the scientific methodology. So it's a great example of citizen science. We also try and publish reports and news flashes quite regularly, because as Nora mentioned, you cannot wait 10 years to provide volunteers with feedback, because the dropout rate will just be sky high. We have been doing this for over 7 years now, and during the first 5 years of the project, over 10,000 standardized counts were done by these citizen scientists. Of course, all of them need to be trained. We have a portal where they can all have a look at the locations that need to be monitored. They first need to apply, so certain rare species will not be shared with the general public, all of those populations, let's say. After they are accepted into a certain species, then they will be able to make a reservation, claim a certain location, and they will receive training, several different methods. Sometimes we go in the field together, but also there is very good guidelines on how they need to do that monitoring. So it's kind of like a citizen scientist translation of those protocols that were written by the government. All of these volunteers, we try to also create a sense of community for them on one hand, but it's also really important, especially in a country like Flanders, that they can ID themselves whenever they are in agricultural land, whenever they are in a natural area. Of course, there's always a contact beforehand between, for example, the ranger of the national park they are conducting research, or with the private landowners. But still, it's good that they can ID themselves. For this, we have several methods. So every volunteer always has a letter from us that really explains well what monitoring needs to be carried out by him, in which locations, in which time periods. And they can also ID themselves by a little badge that shows they are part of this project conducting monitoring for the government. They also have a code of conduct, which basically outlines how a citizen scientist should behave in these natural areas on these private lands while conducting monitoring. Now, what if you're a private landowner, and then especially usually for the stratified samples that are taken, what if one of the populations is selected that is on your private land? How does that work in Belgium? Well, actually, I see quite a coincidence that one of these that is up for claiming here, or that is actually being monitored right now, is actually a private landowner. So that is a private land where monitoring is carried out. How does that work? Well, it works in 3 steps. So at first, if someone claims the location, I will talk with the volunteer and we will check whether there is a good connection between the volunteer and the private landowner already. Quite often, these areas are privately owned natural areas that are quite of good quality, and the owners themselves might want the nature to be monitored. But also quite often that is not the case, or the volunteers don't really know who owns the land. On this case, our partner at the government, they will look up who the private owner is. They will send them a letter explaining that monitoring needs to be carried out for the reportation to Europe, that this is important, and the landowner gets a chance to object to this. If there is an objection, then the government themselves will go and conduct accounts at their place. If there is no objection, then the volunteer and the private landowner will be brought into contact. The private landowner will receive a letter that explains which volunteer will carry out what type of monitoring. So what is the monitoring that needs to be done? The volunteer will need to do 3 visits in the month of May. And of course, there is an extra code of conduct, especially designed for monitoring on private land. There are 7 pointers in them, and this code of conduct was agreed upon between the government and APB, the Private Landowners Association here in Flanders. It is very important, of course, that those volunteers stick to the agreements and that there is a contact in advance between the private landowner and the volunteer to make some good to have a good talk about how are we going to do this, when I come, where should I come first to say that I'm coming. And then there is a couple of things, mainly on data use and expertise on the right of the private landowner, for example, to accompany the volunteer if they want, that the volunteers won't take pictures of things that are not essential for the monitoring, stuff like that. Now, it might be that you're a private landowner yourself and you are interested in what is to be found on your land. Well, apart from the national monitoring scheme that is very standardized, we also have Waarnemingen.be, which we just talked about. And we are pretty lucky, we're part of Observation International, to have a really awesome artificial intelligence. And we also brought that to the people in Belgium and in the rest of Europe, in the form of a really low threshold mobile application. So right now you can just download the app ObsIdentify. It's been downloaded over 1,200,000 times already. And you can just take a picture of any plant, animal, whatever, and it will tell you what it is. and it recognizes over 20,000 European species. So basically anywhere in Europe, if you want to find out what is on your land, you can just take a picture of it. I will not give a live demo of the app right now because I see that we are already running short on time. But what is important, you can just recognize the species, but if you want to, you can also save the observation. Then it will be sent to waarnemingen.be if you're in Belgium, or observation.org if you're outside of Belgium. And there it is added to a really big database. And as Joseph already mentioned, the more observers, the more reliable the data set. Well, we have the highest density per square kilometer of natural data of all over the world, basically. And that really allows us to have early warnings for exotic species, do really solid research, even on those loose observations. And if we add all of that up for observation.org, all of Europe, that's over 200 million observations, or the third largest contributor in the world to the global biodiversity platform. So all of these scientific data. You should have a look at it yourself. If you're a nature NGO, if you're a private landowner, you're interested, come and have a look. We don't only have loose observations with like low threshold apps for everyone to use. We also have pro apps. There is a very, very good quality control on all of the data. And of course, we have checklists and standardized monitoring solutions. And actually, right now, we can offer you a wholesale monitoring solution for any type of standardized monitoring. We have the checklists, but we also have the kind of monitoring scheme I demonstrated right now. We can set that up in a whim for any country. So it's really pretty good. To quote Joseph again, it's better to build on existing systems than create new ones. Well, we have one of the best, so make sure to go and check that out. All right, I hope that was interesting to some of you. And if there's any questions, I will read them later on. And you can, of course, just scan the QR codes and download Obsidentify.
Thank you very much, Hans. Again, a super interesting talk, which shows projects that we're not familiar with. So that's quite impressive. And we're going to continue with Hèctor Hernàndez from the Network of Environmental Observers of the Gaià River. So the floor is yours, Hèctor.
Thank you very much. Share our screen.
Perfect.
Perfect. Thank you. We are Hèctor Hernàndez and Vicent Collado, members of the Environmental Association La Sínia, a small NGO from Catalonia. La Sínia is an environmental organization which promotes a stewardship program in the Gaià River. The main objectives are the conservation of the biodiversity linked to the freshwater habitat of the Gaià River basin, promoting of the volunteer and the environmental education. Gaià River, where the project we present is developed, is a small Mediterranean river, 68 kilometers long, located in the northeast of the Iberian Peninsula. A network of environmental observers of the Gaià River, for us, SHOAC, in Catalan, SHOAC, was born in 2019, aiming to link local people with the conservation of biodiversity and habitats of their own territory, and with a clear will to develop a citizen science project. Be a SHOAC member is open to everyone and requires a little bit of training. This network is managed by La Sínia within the Fluvial Stewardship Program of the Gaià River, proud to be a long-term volunteers project. Sorry.
Basic observation tags are established. These tags will be adapted and modified according to the achievement of new projects and proposals of general interest. Establishment of new priority lines of action. There are currently 6 lines of work defined as follows. Line 1, detection of the presence of American mink, an invasive exotic species that in recent years has become established in the basin. Line 2, detection of the presence of salamander, adults and larvae, and other amphibians. This observation is also important because La Sínia promotes a conservation project for this species. Line 3, detection of the presence of exotic aquatic fauna species, such as fish, turtles, and American crab. Line 4, search of water point for amphibians. Line 5, existence of hydromorphological alterations in the river, application of hydromorphological quality indexes. Line 6, Kentish plover, monitoring of the nesting areas of this bird on the beach of Tamarit, at the mouth of the Gaià River, as well as monitoring of chicks and reporting possible problems since 2019. In order to constitute a group of experienced observers, an homogeneous observation criteria, theoretical trainings is carried out annually on each line of observation. Moreover, this training is complemented by practical sessions in where participants apply different observation methodologies. Likewise, some of the practical sessions are focused on specific topics such as the improvement of aquatic habitat or the establishment of amphibians. These practical sessions can also be organized as part of volunteers. Data collected is managed by La Sínia and can be used in the framework of a project or, for example, to be reported to the administrations. This data is sent through an online form or email. Participants are asked to make observation following specific guidelines. Observation are not only take place in the main axis of the Gaià, but also in stream and ravines, wetlands, or urban centers. The advantage of outings, excursions, visit, or export practices. Carry out rigorous and concrete observations in time and space. Follow all the identification guidelines of the different tags of observation. In case of emergency, observation of serious alterations in the riverbed and riverbank or animal mortality, for example, call the 112 emergency phone number. So important, do not take any direct action or manipulate the fauna during the observation. If in doubt, contact La Sínia.
Currently, network of environmental observers of the Gaià River has a total of 110 registering environmental observers who, in addition to participate in proposed activities, work independently, making their observations throughout the basin. We value possibly the development of the SHOAC, since the organization has managed to create a network of interconnected volunteers in accordance with lines of work set as objectives of the project. On the other hand, we believe that feedback between La Sínia and the observers will be more efficient. Therefore, we work to introduce means of communication as well as an annual evaluation survey for observers. Finally, we think that it's a replicable proposal in any territory, and that we encourage everyone involved in the society natural conservation. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, guys. You have stick to the time, so that is fantastic. Well done. Again, learning a lot from different projects of different scales of different parts of Europe. So it's fantastic. I have checked the chat, and well, most of the questions have been already replied. By the way, before I forget, we have a quite exciting announcement, because there is a person who has a private landowner from France who has offered his land for which is within a national park. He's offering his land for being part of a citizen science project. So that's a that's a good result, to be honest. And before well, if somebody has additional questions, they can put it on the box. I have very quick questions. The first one, Nora, you talk about the activities you are doing for reinforcing your feedback in France, but do you have, I don't know, a particular activity like in-person workshop or something that you think is the best way to engage with the people?
So it's quite difficult to find the perfect way to do a feedback, because we have a lot of different type of participants and they don't expect sorry, the same thing. But the first step that we don't have so far, and that is really important to me, is like on the website, when they are connected, have on their interface some quick result of their about their own result, because it do not exist so far, and it's really missing for the participants. So far we are relying on the local structures to take their result on their data and to do the feedback to the participants, and for them it's really time consuming. So just to have simple some graph, some map and so on, yeah, will be nice.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just keep it simple. It's always a good advice. Thank you very much, Nora. I have a question for Hans. Well, it is clear that you have everything. You have protocols. You have everything defined. I'm just curious about when it comes to training volunteers. And I think that before there was some comments about this for all the talks. If there is any assessment of those volunteers, because it happens, for example, to us that somebody has reported a species in a certain place that it's impossible to see that species. Do you have this type of assessment?
Yes, so as mentioned earlier, we have waarnemingen.be with a very strict quality control, which means we have over 200 highly specialized volunteers that check every single image. And of course, that is also the pool of users. We have over 80,000 active users a year. So that is the pool of user we will use and kind of use to go and handpick people that we could train to do the national monitoring scheme as well. So you can actually just see, okay, this observer has 2,000 butterfly observations, and 99% of them were identified correctly from the first time, from get-go. He lives in the general area, the general vicinity of the site we need to monitor. That's very important. And then we will contact them. And as I said, the personal approach is really important. Would you like to monitor this? For me, it's only 3 times this year, and then we can reevaluate. And if then you send them some feedback after a year, just on the general trends for the species of that year. And even if you don't have scientific trends yet, just, okay, it was a very dry year. We could see there was not a lot of activity for the dragonflies and everything. We find that that is enough to motivate, keep them motivated, at least for the 7 years we've been going on for this and the 20 years we've been doing the bird monitoring. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Hans. Again, fascinating. And I have a quick question for Hector and Vicente or Victor. Yeah, it's about the emergency system you have. In case I'm just interested in how that works, not only the communication, but yeah, if you could explain how that works.
I'm sorry for our English. Yeah, I don't.
Don't worry.
Very
don't
well.
worry. We understand you perfectly. Don't you worry.
The guide for the observer, it's very clear, and there are several steps. But it's very important if you watch an emergency every time you don't action, you call to the authorities. Ever for our, it's very important, and people don't impact a negative impact when you observe. You only observe, don't talk. Done nothing.
Okay, well, that's a very good advice. Yeah, you see, but you don't touch. Just wait. Don't be worried. That's very good. So that's great. Thank you very much, guys, for your presentation and for your replies.